1033. This is Chapter 8, Section 2, Solving Quadratics by the Quadratic Formula. First of all, let me say this, that in solving, first of all, knowing quadratics, the highest degree is the second power. The order of what you should ask questions about how to solve these is, first of all, if you can solve them algebraically, you want to solve them algebraically. If you can solve them by factoring, you want to solve them by factoring. If you can solve them by completing the square and then solving by algebraic manipulation, then that's what you want to do. The quadratic formula is your last resort. Notice that here's a trinomial, ax squared plus bx plus c. The highest degree of it is the second power, which means it's quadratic. The quadratic formula says, notice that the coefficient in front of x squared is a, coefficient in front of x is b, the constant is c. Now this quadratic formula says negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Remember we talked about b squared minus 4ac before, it's the discriminant. Remember, if this in here becomes positive, we have two solutions because we have a plus and a minus of that. If this inside here becomes 0, we only have one solution because then this whole thing is wiped out and we just have negative b over 2a. If this inside here becomes a negative, it becomes a complex solution because we have to move the I outside. So here's the first example problem. We have 3x squared plus 16x plus 5. A is 3, b is 16, 5 is c. We substitute those numbers into the quadratic formula. We can see that we get x equals negative 16 plus or minus square root of 16 squared minus 4 times 3 times 5 over 2 times 3. That gives us negative 16 plus or minus square root of 256 minus 60 over 6, which gives us negative 16 plus or minus square root of 196 over 6. Square root of 196 is a perfect square, it's 14. So it becomes negative 16 plus or minus 14 over 6, which becomes negative 16 plus 14 over 6, which becomes negative 2 over 6, which is negative 1/3. There's one solution. Over here we get negative 16 minus 14 over 6, which gives us negative 30 over 6, which gives us negative 5. So here we have two solutions. We have two solutions because the discriminant, which was the b squared minus 4ac, was positive. We have our second example. We chose this one because of the fractions, because I want you to be aware that, remember, whenever we have fractions in an algebraic equation, we can always multiply through by something to get rid of the fractions and make them whole numbers, which is what I did here. The least common denominator between 1/2 and 1/4 is 4. So what we did was multiply 4 times this term, 4 times this term, 4 times this term. The 4 times the 1/4 gave us a 1. The 4 times the negative 1 gave us a minus 4. 4 times 1/2 gave us 2. Our A is 1, our B is negative 4, our C is 2. Substituting into the quadratic formula, we get negative 4 plus or minus square root of negative 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times 2 over 2 times 1. Simplifying, we get 4, because this is a double negative right here, this becomes a positive 4, plus or minus square root of 8 over 2. Square root of 8 reduces to 2 over 2 because it's 4 times 2. Square root of 4 is 2. We simplify right here. We have to do 4 divided by 2, we get 2. If we do 2 divided by 2, we get 1. So we get 2 plus or minus the square root of 2.